And Meggie Lasher is the research and academic engagement librarian at Davidson College, a small liberal arts college in North Carolina, where she leads a lot of instruction for the undergraduate population there. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Meggie.
Great. Thanks, Devin. Thank you all for being here today. I'm really excited to be part of an NC Live initiative. I know as I can remember the days in high school when I got to use NC Live and we had to have a secret password to get to all of the resources. So it's a nice full circle moment to be here together with you. I'm going to share my screen, and like Devin said, I will have these slides available for you. I've tried to include a little more text than I normally would, because I do think it's helpful when reviewing slides if you have some good both visual and textual reminders of what we were talking about together. Like Devin said, I am the research and academic engagement librarian at Davidson College. This photo is a little misleading because there I am at UT Austin exploring the stacks there. So just full disclosure. In general, I am an enthusiast, not necessarily an expert in project outcome, but I really enjoy finding tools that can help ease the processes and workflows related to everyday work that we do at libraries. And I've really identified project outcome as one of those tools. So I'm grateful to add to your toolkit today. And hopefully you can bring some of this and apply it at your library with your team. Okay, so of course we have to start with a question and a presentation about assessment. And I'm curious, if you were to ask yourself, what does assessment look like at my library, what would come to mind? One way to reflect on this question is to consider the tools and the techniques that you use. So do you do exit surveys after an event? Do you use a rubric to evaluate literacy or early childhood literacy sessions? Do you do an end of year survey? Do you employ Qualtrics across your county? I'm going to give you a couple moments to reflect on this. And then we'll get to paint a picture together of considering what assessment looks like at our libraries right now. So go ahead and take a moment to reflect. Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to introduce you to another assessment tool, so sneaky. This is great for like an exit ticket or very short. This is Poll Everywhere, so you may be familiar with this platform. So in order to respond, there's two methods to share your input. The first is to go to pollev.com/Meggie Lasher. So I'm Meggie with an E, and Lasher like eyelashes, and then 287. Or if you are on a mobile device today, you're going to start a new text to the number 37607, and you'll type in my name, all caps, so Meggie Lasher 287, and you'll be able to text your response and you'll see it here. If you have technical difficulties, that's totally fine. You can also use the chat. So again, a short little assessment right at the beginning of our presentation. So I'll see how we do here. And it's okay if it takes you a little bit. Great. So seeing some response already. You're very quick. Surveys. See who else can respond. And feel free to use the chat too, that's totally fine. Here I'm using a word cloud free response option, which is really nice to take the temperature in a room. Okay, so we'll use surveys as our example, and it looks like Jessica just shared paper surveys with us as well. Surveys and aha slides. Ooh, I'm curious to learn more about that later. So thank you all for sharing these. I appreciate it. So now that we have dipped our toes, oh, thanks for the ACRL framework as well. The rubrics are really interesting. So now that we've dipped our toes into painting a picture of what assessment looks like in our libraries, why not introduce another tool into your arsenal of connecting and understanding the impact of your library? So I'm going to outline this tool sort of from a bird's eye view. We will have two opportunities to move into a more detailed look. Otherwise, we could probably have a series of five or six sessions about project outcome. So in general, project outcome is browser-based. So you don't have to download anything. It's not a subscription type of model. It is totally in your browser, and it is just for libraries. And I think with that in mind, project outcome is ideal because it's geared to demonstrate and show off all the work that we do. So here you'll see a screenshot of my data dashboard. And I promise, even though the first one says 0 responses, we do have plenty of data to look at, but that's a little wink at something we'll talk about later. We'll look at both the survey building tool and the data dashboard together. Okay, so let's look just back in the rearview mirror a little bit. Project outcome, what I'm looking at now is we'll look at the academic library version just because that's my context from my organization. So if you are affiliated with a public library, no worries. The overlap here abounds because project outcome for academic libraries is actually from the Public Library Association. So the first project outcome was just for public libraries. And the version we'll look at today for academic libraries was launched in 2019, so still relatively young. It's been free, totally free, and I think that it will hopefully be free in the future as well. And for full transparency, because I think that's important when talking about data and assessment, it is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So there is some sponsorship there from an outside organization. Okay. As information professionals, we deal with all sorts of issues and situations related to data, whether it's conserving, protecting privacy of our patrons and the materials that they use, whether it's their personal information and their account data. We're always dealing with data in different situations. Project outcome is no exception to dealing with the challenges related to collecting, storing, and reporting data. What I've done here is I've pulled a quote from a longer FAQ about project outcome. So all the data that you contribute to project outcome is aggregated to form a nationwide perspective. So everything you contribute also informs other libraries and their practices just as much as it does yours. So again, these are data informed decisions, and that data comes from all of us working together as we use this platform. So again, a moment of transparency that is necessary when working with data. Okay, now that we've gone over the history and a few key features, a few key factors in using project outcome, I'd like to move into a closer look as we can factor in the shared understanding of the platform. So again, this is the academic library example. This version includes 7 different areas of assessment, which allows quite a bit of range, I think, in the different type of work that libraries do. I'm especially interested in trying out this space study. I don't know if anybody's tried to do a heat map at midnight in a very busy building. It's not an easy feat. So having a tool like that is one of those examples that I think of a real benefit to project outcome. The public library version would feature areas of assessment that are more catered towards the services that public libraries provide. And I've taken note of a couple so that you can use that to inform your perspective. These would include early childhood literacy, lifelong learning, summer reading, job and job support, civic engagement, health, and economic development. So again, plenty of range, so there's plenty of room to accommodate what your library does and to take an accurate snapshot of those activities. Obviously, it's called project outcome. So clarity about outcomes is probably one of the standalone features, I think, of project outcome. As someone who does participate in research and talks about research outcomes in the classroom, sometimes I find myself really struggling to operationalize definitions, or if you handle those paper surveys, trying to cipher handwritten things. We've all been there where we're trying to figure out what this person is trying to say, or sort of what the impact is of a particular program. Project outcome allows us to do this with quite a bit of clarity in 4 categories. So knowledge, confidence, application, and awareness. Now there's also some parallel with the public library version. I think there may be a little bit of a language, just different wording there. So there we go. We've got areas of assessment and outcomes coming together with quite a bit of clarity. And now types of assessment. So what tools are available to you within the project outcome toolkit, which is that project outcome toolkit is language that you'll see a lot on the website. Okay. Let's see here. What we'll look at today is a type of survey. We'll be using a follow-up survey that usually is taken 4 to 6 weeks out from a particular event, but there's also the option to do something with a lot more immediacy. I really appreciate the clarity here provided with the measurement, so we can keep that in mind when we implement the actual survey. Again, something for us to hang our hat on when creating a narrative informed by data. And that final sort of type of assessment hanging out on the right-hand side, the outcome measurement guidelines. So this is a longer, it says deeper analysis, but I found this to be sort of performance-based or long-term outcomes. So like if you're working towards something. So I see the outcome measurement to be quite longitudinal and is perhaps a helpful perspective when you are considering strategic goals or departmental goals, so that you can track those over time and have a comparative perspective to your own data, where again, the immediate and the follow-up surveys have some currency to them, but perhaps when looked at separately, don't provide the same long-term analysis that we can get from the guidelines presented in the toolkit. So we're going to look at project outcome in action. What you see here is a snapshot from a recent event that we had at Davidson. We did a glow-in-the-dark ghost story tour. It was really fun. I'm always surprised when college students get excited about things like this. Sometimes I worry that I'm not picking up on what they're interested in or excited about, but we had a great turnout and a lot of fun. So I encourage you to whip out the glow sticks. You'd be surprised by how much fun you can have with glow sticks. So we'll be using this past ghost story event as our example to create a survey. Oops. So we'll be collecting out of the outreach category, which is one of the main categories that Project Outcome employs us with. So that's great that we have that immediate connection. We'll be using the survey management tool within the larger toolkit. And the type of survey, like I mentioned, we'll be using a follow-up survey. So technically, we're not 4 to 6 weeks out from Halloween. Don't know how we got to November already, but for the example in this case, we'll be calling on a follow-up survey to help us create a better picture of the success of this event. Okay, I'm going to switch over to Project Outcomes dashboard here. I'll give you a quick little tour. You can see here that I have my account at this level, so you will have to sign up. And what I really like about Project Outcome is that you don't have to share a login like you do with some other platforms, or you have like a generic login like library checkout station number 1. Everyone at your organization, I think there may be a limit, but you can work with the Project Outcome team to have more logins. I recently learned that. Everyone has their own account associated with your institution. So that's really helpful. We were playing around with different locations, so please ignore that. But here's sort of our location. So if you have branches, I can see that being really helpful. We have users associated. So we all have our own account associated with our location, or AKA institution. So I find that incredibly helpful as far as feeling like I am able to make surveys on my own time to reflect my classes. And I know that we're all using the same tool with the same structure and materials, so that the outcomes that we're looking for or hoping to find will have that similarity that we really want for rich and accurate data. So that's, I find that very assuring. Okay, so you'll see here, yes, my French 490 class only had 3 responses, but that's because there's only 3 French majors who are taking that class semester. So we'll talk a little bit more about survey responses in a moment. Okay, so let's create a new survey together. Okay. So what you'll see here is several different options. Again, the clarity is super helpful, especially when you know the general areas of assessment that we'll use. So you'll recognize this stack under survey topic from that areas of assessment slide. I can create one from scratch, which I'll do today. I can copy an existing one. So for example, if you teach or if you're engaged with the same class or same workshop over and over and over, you can copy that all of the questions and sort of special response areas that you've already created and put that work into there. Or you can, especially for, I'm thinking for different branches, you can use a template. So all children's programs follow this template, or all adult book clubs will follow the adult book club template. So again, just because there is a lot of structure with Project Outcome doesn't mean that there aren't avenues to customize your survey. And you'll see a couple of these opportunities to customize to your institution and the questions you want to ask in just a moment. So I'm going to scroll down to events and programs. And again, like I mentioned, I want to do a follow-up. These help me choose options break down the different areas of assessment. So again, having the definitions of topic or areas of assessment very already defined and having that structure, again, it allows us the same sort of consistency. And I think that, again, that's really helpful in being able to create a strong survey. Survey type, again, is where I mentioned that follow-up is 4 to 8 weeks. So we'll pretend we're later in November there. So let's go ahead and select follow-up and we'll go next. Okay, Now we'll detail some of the program information. You can add a logo. So maybe your library has a logo, maybe your department uses a certain scheme of colors associated with the library logo. Whenever I do a print survey, so you'll see that we can do print and digital, I'll add a photo here that reflects the class or reflects the activity. So for program name, you can see I was practicing earlier, so I'm going to type in glow in the dark ghost story tour. Again, there's more specifics about how to fill this out. So again, you have tools to maintain consistency and that user education piece right when you're making the survey rather than before or looking at a generated survey after. So again, I like the immediacy of the tools in place for you there. So our event date was, it gives you the little calendar, which I find super helpful. You can also do several different days if you want. Location, so if you had a branch, you could change that. Again, you'll see that we were experimenting earlier. So I'm going to say it was at Davidson. And any internal notes here. So that's nice. As a survey manager, you can keep any type of documentation there as well, and it will stay with your survey. We'll head next to the survey settings. Again, building the survey with custom options is immediately available to you, as well as definitions for what each section says. So you can tell them like what the goal of the survey is. You can say thank you or thank you from all your friends at so-and-so library, that sort of thing. Both of these are optional, so we're just going to leave them blank for right now. Okay, so here's that moment where we need to make a couple of decisions. You can add in individual, like original questions. And this is where we kind of run into some of the situations related to data that we have to navigate. So you notice here, there's we want to maintain anonymity. We don't want people to abandon it if it's too specific. We have to be mindful of, our wording, if it's going to be on a single page, or if it's going to be double page. So there are questions here that can help inform any of the custom questions that you want to add. So for example, for a particular survey that I did evaluating exam time programming, I did include a long form, a survey question that was like a long form answer. So looking for a couple sentences or bullet points. And because I did a paper survey, it was very easy for me to capture that data. And I was able to, transcribe that into results into a final report. So even though we run into a couple of hurdles when we add our own questions, there are ways to integrate those unique questions into your final report. And I'll point that out when we look at a report together. Okay, heading to the next question on administering the survey. Ta-da! So we'll get a PDF preview. You can also download it as English, Spanish, or French. And then you can also use an online version in English, Spanish, or French. So for example, what will happen is you'll get a browser-based version of the exact same survey, and they'll be able to submit that from their browser. So again, I think having both options is very helpful when thinking about our user groups and what their preferences are. And again, you'll create the space for you to enter that data from the data dashboard. So even if a paper survey is used, it is very easy to input it into the survey management so that then when we run a report, that will be captured correctly there. Also, I think a hidden benefit of using the online survey is it allows you to use any of your like click counting platforms like Bitly or Owly. We're using one called Short.io at Davidson now, and I find that really helpful. If you use LibGuides, you can insert the survey link maybe in your follow-up email to a class, or even in like the calendar event, the calendar space for a particular event on your LibCal. So there's some hidden benefits, or maybe really obvious benefits, to employing an online version of your survey. Okay, so we're done here. Yay. And we'll go back to our survey management option. So what you'll see here is it's hanging out here. All of the details that we've put in are available to us immediately. We can get a quick report, which would run the survey responses really quickly. The more entries, the longer it takes. So literally we don't have anything. So that's why it was super, super quick. Super quick to run that, but again, the more responses you have, just know that that'll take a little longer. Easy to copy it for another iteration, or edit the survey if you need to make updates. You can also archive it or delete it. That's totally fine too. Okay. Let's see here. Our next option is to consider project outcome in its data dashboard form. So this time, instead of outreach, I'll be employing the assessment area of instruction. That's where the bulk of our survey data comes from, is from instruction. Like I mentioned, we'll be employing the data dashboard tool within project outcome, and we'll be looking at reports. Darn it, I'm mad that I closed that out. So let me get back to project outcome. So there's my account. So from the main page, we were just at survey management. Now we're going to click over to data dashboard. And this is where things look a little bit different. We have six different kind of avenues to go down generating data or understanding different data inputs to a particular narrative. So I'll walk through the building report feature, but in order to, it does take it a little while with the examples that I have. So we'll look at the final version in an already open screen. So it's kind of like on a morning cooking show where you make it in front of everyone, and then the beautiful recipe comes out of the oven. So we'll have one of those moments together today. Okay, so I'm just going to click on build report up here. Who is it for? Again, you can see how we were experimenting, but if you had a different branch, you could change that there. And your Carnegie class is used in a higher education setting to denote which type of degree granting institution you are. So I'm going to select baccalaureate. So this is where the aggregated data comes into play. So I'm going to compare Davidson with the scores and the outcomes associated with all of the other baccalaureate colleges that are using project outcome. So see how generating from the data dashboard is really similar, moving through the process related to making a survey. So that's really nice. There's those little question marks again. So the timeliness of the support you're given here is really helpful. Again, we see these areas of assessment are called topic within the platform. I'm going to select instruction, and I'm going to use a report that incorporates all of our immediate surveys from certain classes. You can select a date range, or you can select certain programs. So for example, the report that I'll show you in just a moment, I put all of them up there, and that took a really long time. It's like 220 something responses. So it was like, oh, no. I weeded through things and ended up just selecting our French and our Spanish classes, which allowed me to take like a foreign language view of what our immediate survey responses in instruction would be. I am going to skip to the preview. And what happens here? Oh, you know what? I think it would be better. You can select, you can write a custom narrative. I prefer this wording here, purpose statement, a little bit more. You can even use the example text again. So just click on example text, which is again really super helpful if you're new to creating a report. And then we can add some specific information as well. You do cap out, I think, at 500 characters. So that's a little frustrating, but again, the richness of the report actually speaks quite a bit for itself. And again, if you have a logo, you can do that. We don't have any logos uploaded, and we get our preview. Here's that moment where if we had decided to add in open-ended responses, so like those custom questions or longer form things, we can add them in here. So that's, again, another feature that I don't want the structure and sort of the consistency woven through project outcome to deter you from using it. There are several options to incorporate custom stuff. So I'm not going to generate the report because it would take a while. So we're going to click over to our magic one that's been baking in the oven since we started talking. So you'll see here, I know it's a little hard to see. Here is that statement of purpose where I just copied the original text. I enjoy how they again say like this is what we're doing. It's associated with project outcome, tells you how many responses. So this is the French and Spanish option. Out of 48 responses, 87% saying that they, 87% strongly agreed that learning something new would help them succeed in classes. So there's that knowledge. This little person with their arms up is about confidence. So completing their assignment, which always makes you feel good when you're in instruction. The gears, so intending, that's application. So that's a great rate of involvement that are looking for it to application. 85% more aware, so that I is for awareness. We see mostly the largest light purple space. Most people were saying, yeah, I agree with that. And then we have quite a few saying, yes, I strongly agree. And then you can also, we don't have any strongly disagree, but we have a little bit of neither and disagree as well. So that could be an interesting point to evaluate closer. Here are the breakdown of the subject, the topic or the assessment area breakdown. So for our library, we can see them here with the criteria, Carnegie class, and then nationally. You can edit the report criteria. You can add custom pages. And so if we had added other content or long form things, then we can add them here as well. You move through the space, tells you there's an attendance tracking feature if you do instruction. And here's some long form questions as well, but those weren't added in. And again, a brief report about the surveys used. So that's why project outcome really covers a lot of bases when it comes to using the data and presenting a very well done report with plenty of visual interest, as well as sort of the structural narrative that helps our readers or maybe our team lead, our director, individuals like that understand what's going on. Okay. Go back into full screen. So now that I've been gushing about project outcome for a while, I wanted to distill some of the major pros that I found associated with this tool. So I've called this low startup cost. Cost really isn't the correct word because obviously it's free, but when we think about library work, a lot of our work is invisible or it's very visible, and the labor required to make our work visible I still consider that a cost, whether it's our energy, our effort, our time, things like that. So as far as investing a lot of time and energy, it has low startup costs associated with getting project outcome going. I mentioned earlier and showed that on the account page that it's a multi-user platform. So you each have your own individual login, but that grants you the ability to be part of a team associated with a larger institution. So I really appreciate that, that you can have ownership and as well as consistency with other members on your team using Project Outcome. Like I showed earlier, it's kind of like a cooking show where they bring out the beautiful final product just in time to try it at the end. That's how I feel with report building. It's downright magic when you get to that final page. And both with the, I really appreciate the visuals, as well as incorporating the definitions and having really, having sort of draws the eye there. And I think that even the color combinations are quite eye-popping. What we haven't outlined yet is a lot of the learning documentation and training videos available to anyone using Project Outcome. I even still look at the public library ones, so I think it's great to use them both in tandem. So I hope that, again, if you're new to using a specific platform or find yourself like, I sometimes struggle to integrate new tools into my workflows and have really benefited from the training materials that already exist. And finally, it's quick and easy. We made a survey in like 3 minutes, and it was that long because I kept talking to you. So I think that one of the really big pros to Project Outcome is how easy it is and the speed that you can crank it out. So for example, if you wanted to do, you forgot to make a survey after an author talk, you can make one really quickly on Project Outcome, knowing that you have high quality questions geared to ask about specific outcomes, and providing a consistent opportunity both in print and online. Okay, we can't not talk about cons. So first is one that I've highlighted just a little bit, is that we are looking at aggregated data. Maybe you prefer to not add your information about your library and usage and things like that into a wider sort of bank. So that's again one of those moments where we kind of butt up against the issues and situations with data management and data literacy that we have to make decisions about. I will say that because the data is associated with the Public Library Association and with ACRL and wider ALA, there is the notion of that you're supporting other libraries by using Project Outcome, and it shows where you are in outcome related success. So even though there is sort of this wider like invisible like bank that you're filling, you can still get personalized enough output so that it really does benefit you just as much as it benefits others. So there's some dichotomy there, but really it's very easy to meet in the middle. And then finally, you have to fill the tank. So you noticed earlier in my screenshot from the dashboard at the very beginning of the presentation, my glow in the dark ghost tour one that I made the day of had 0 responses. And that's because I forgot to implement it. So again, the report building magic and all of those things from the pro slide won't really be that wonderful if there's no data or no survey responses in the toolkit. So again, even though it's kind of like my idea was, I don't think we could use fill the tank, but kind of like a crock pot, set it and forget it. But if you don't put any ingredients, anything, you're going to come home to no dinner. So again, if you want the outcome associated with Project Outcome, we have to put the data in it. So those two kind of points of tension of one, the survey giver forgetting to add ask others to fill it out, and then a low response rate based from the user end. So, we have to deal with those things sometimes. Okay. So we've gone over some pretty general features and sort of a bird's eye view of Project Outcome. I'd like us to zoom in a little bit and consider the case at Davidson about how we're approaching Project Outcome. So first you'll see our like 6 little steps in our journey. Probably could have added some pit stops in between there and maybe a gas station for a snack, but we'll stick with these now. So digital learning, which was a team of instructional designers and sort of media specialists, came over from our IT department maybe the summer before last, right before the pandemic. Time is a little fuzzy sometimes, and joined sort of the teaching team associated with instruction librarians. So we were both using different forms of assessment to capture sort of our involvement with students, our involvement with faculty, and there was sort of a discussion about what other tools could we use related to instruction, because we were doing similar things but not the same. So how do we implement something that can capture sort of the nuance to what we do in the classroom, but still provide us that consistency between method and format? So I presented project outcome as a possibility to both our team of instructional designers and teaching librarians. I had previously used the public library version for program assessment as a graduate student. And so we stepped into our virtual learning. So we used a lot of online browser-based surveys in spring 2021. So we have a pretty good chunk of data associated with virtual learning. We ended up, now we're at about 200, when I checked this last week, we're at 213 responses. So a decent enough chunk to evaluate. And now at step 5, we made an interesting crossroads point of comparing sort of spring 2021 teaching and fall 2021 teaching, where we were fully remote versus now where we've been in a hybrid space. So maybe evaluating the outcomes associated, those clear outcomes in an instruction space could be really helpful to us to evaluate maybe some highs and lows associated with different types of instruction. And now moving onward, I think that's also the nature of assessment. It's a continual, maybe this should have been like a race car track with some pit stop spots around there, because I think like I said, we have to keep filling that tank. And with new data, we're allowed to understand the changing landscapes of our patrons' needs and really engage with those on a close level and give them the real care that, that I know our patrons deserve when it comes to interacting with us and us providing services and resources. So here's the question. Can project outcome cure your assessment woes? I've broken down some questions for you. So at the beginning, talked about things from a bird's eye view. We just looked at things from the case at Davidson with a combined teaching team. So now, when you consider the tools that you use now, let's see if we can apply this CURE acronym to that space. So first, the C stands for current. So I'm asking you to perhaps incorporate that first question from the beginning of this presentation about what you currently employ at the library. So paper, rubric, big Qualtrics, surveys, countywide, things like that. The U is for use. So do you actually use the methods that you are supposed to employ? Or is this something that's too difficult, or takes 7 different logins, or is only paper, or the reporting feature is really difficult? Are they working for you? So I think that's an important question to reflect on when thinking about use related to assessment. Next, we have the R for results. So this is thinking about how you can share the results and also how you see them. Are they easy to understand? Could you put a report that you created on someone else's desk and see if they would they understand what you were trying to capture and connect with the narrative that you're creating? I think results is an incredibly important part, not just the data collection, but again, how we're going to create that picture. And then finally, evolve. So where are you in your journey? Like either the race car track or the bumpy road that we were just on. Is it time to try something new? Is it time to reevaluate what you are doing? Or maybe it's time to jump ship. How can you improve and evolve on what you're doing right now, so that you can continue to support your patrons and also potential patrons? I think that's the real beauty of assessment, is that it gives us insight to who's using the library and perhaps how we can connect with those who we would love to be part of our community as well. So cure, current, use, results, and evolve. That wraps up what I have for now. I'm really grateful for your time and your participation. I know you were probably thinking that you wouldn't have to be involved in assessment in a presentation about assessment. So I'm grateful that you participated. Please follow Davidson College Library. We're EH Little Library, so we get some good puns about little and big, and we're the Wildcats, so we have a lot of fun with that. And you can also contact me with my Davidson email address, and I'll make sure that that is in the follow-up email. And then again, another great big thanks to NC Live for all the work that you do, and all the services that I know we use actively here at Davidson.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Folks, if you have questions, feel free to submit them in the chat. I know we had one question earlier that was asking, do you find that having surveys specific to a certain class reduces student anonymity?
Well, I think the example that I showed you with just 3 respondents is probably not a great example. But as far, I think how would I say this? I think the structure and the consistency between questions related to instruction, they're not overly invasive as far as like asking about like how they feel or the prep that they've done for a particular assignment. So I felt pretty confident. And then of course, they don't have to answer as well. So I think that either the paper survey and the browser survey, it's not like Qualtrics where it's like walking you through something and you can't go to the next page until you filled something out. So I think you raised a really great point, and I would almost be fine with a partially filled survey or an abandoned one if someone didn't feel comfortable.
Chad's asking a question. I had to join late, so I apologize if this has been answered already. The website says there are 672 academic libraries that have created surveys. Is there a list anywhere so we could connect with libraries in our area/state?
Ooh, yeah, I don't know if there's a firm list, but you can use the map feature in the data dashboard, and I believe that will allow you to see what's around you. But that's a great question. I'm in touch with the project outcome editorial board. I'm seeing if she's made it today. But I'll have an opportunity shortly to ask those questions. And you know, that's a really exciting thing too, to create those to create those connections. Thanks for the question, Chad.
All right, well, if we have no other questions, I figure we can kind of head out early.